A wind like broken glass slid through the alley behind Mrs. Carter's bakery. Jacob tucked his knees under an old denim jacket and watched his breath turn to ghosts. You could hear the highway, distant, like a tired ocean. The back door light flickered, on and off, a heartbeat against the dark. He wasn't waiting for morning, he was waiting for a sign. Neighbors had seen him around town, sure, but seeing isn't the same as knowing. They passed by with coffee and headlines, busy as church bells on Sunday. Someone should do something, they'd whisper, and keep walking. Jacob learned to read kindness the way sailors read the sky. Cloudy, then clear, never certain. If stories like this tug at your heart, you're among friends here. Feel welcome to subscribe and gently tap the little bell, so you don't miss what comes next. We keep it warm, respectful, and real, like a kitchen table after supper. Because some moments deserve to be held, not hurried. And this one's just getting started. That winter pressed down hard, the kind that bites through 2 sweaters and a wish. He found shelter in places folks forget, behind the library, under the bleachers. You won't believe what happened the night the stadium lights stayed on. A janitor left a trash bag of lost and found scarves by the fence. Jacob swore the pile glowed like a campfire. He picked the red one, soft as a prayer shawl. Wrapped it twice, once for warmth and once for courage. The world felt smaller, but smaller can mean safer. As scripture whispers, the sparrow is seen. Maybe a boy in an alley is seen, too. Morning meant movement. He learned that hope shows up early, right when the diner's neon blinks awake. Miss Linda slid a plate to the end of the counter. Extra toast, no questions. Eat while it's hot, sweetie. Kindness, buttered and thin as a nickel. At the bus stop, kids laughed about movies and weekend plans. Jacob kept to the edge, where the wind couldn't brand his cheeks. A boy named Tyler offered a hand warmer, pretending it was a spare. Got to anyway, he shrugged, and Jacob didn't call the bluff. Mercy likes disguises. Nights were the hardest. Streetlights hummed like tired bees above the church parking lot. A volunteer left a box labeled, "Coats, take one." Jacob touched each sleeve like he was greeting a friend. He picked the blue one with a missing button, because missing things know how to stay. Once, the sheriff slowed by and rolled down his window. The talk could have gone sideways, but didn't. "Stay where folks can see you," he said, voice low, eyes kind. "Not every badge is a wall. Some are a bridge." Jacob nodded, and the car eased away. On Sundays, he stood in the last pew at St. Matthew's, just to listen. The choir sang Amazing Grace, and he mouthed the words. Not because he had it all together. Because grace is for the not together. And that made him brave for one more week. Hunger has a clock, and it keeps lousy hours. He learned the quiet times, between breakfast and lunch, between pity and pride. The pantry at the community center smelled like cardboard and cinnamon. Mrs. Diaz slipped a granola bar into his pocket. "God sees," she whispered, and Jacob believed for about an hour. He carried a secret like a stone in his shoe. A name he never said out loud, a face he remembered only in fragments. His mother kept stories folded tight, like letters she'd never mail. "Not tonight," she'd say, eyes on the sink, hands in the suds. And the sink would swallow the words. "You've felt it, haven't you? That ache of almost answers. The hush before a truth lands." Jacob felt it every time a car slowed near the curb. Every time a stranger said his name softer than normal. Hope, trying on different coats. Snow began to fall in slow-motion confetti. The town blurred to watercolor, Main Street, the pawn shop, the thrift store window with the wedding dress. Jacob traced hearts on the fogged glass, then wiped them away. Love felt like that, appearing, then vanishing, leaving a circle of warmth. But circles can be doors if you're patient. At the laundromat, warmth spilled from the dryers like July. He fed quarters someone gave him, though he hated the sound of them leaving. A woman with silver hair folded towels with tender precision. "Fold the edges toward the center," she said, smiling. He did, and something in him lined up too. The librarian noticed the way he lingered near biographies. "People's lives are maps," she told him. "Some roads are rough, all roads go somewhere." Jacob checked out a book about a man who lost everything, then found faith. He carried it like a lantern. You won't believe what happened behind the grocery store one windy afternoon. A paper bag burst, sending apples rolling like marbles. Jacob chased them, laughing, until a pair of boots stopped the last one. The man picked it up and handed it over. "Keep it," he said, and there was a tremor in his voice. That night, Jacob dreamed of a porch light that never turned off. Of a voice saying his name the way a promise sounds. He woke to frost on his eyelashes and the smell of wood smoke. Somewhere, someone was making pancakes. Blessing has a way of traveling on the wind. At school, a teacher named Mr. Brooks noticed the way Jacob wrote about storms. "How do you know so much about cold?" he asked. Jacob shrugged. "The cold teaches." Mr. Brooks nodded like he'd heard a sermon. "Then keep listening, son." Faith didn't arrive like fireworks. It arrived like matches in a pocket, small, ordinary, unbelievably useful. He'd strike one in prayer, shielding the flame with his hand. "Lord, just tonight," he'd say. And most nights, the wind agreed. The Good Samaritan showed up in pieces. A cup of cocoa from a stranger's porch. A pair of socks left on the steps of the YMCA. A note in loopy handwriting, "You matter." Tiny stitches in a ripped-up world. Jacob kept a journal in the margins of old homework. Short lines. True words. "Cold can't own me." "Kindness counts like pennies." "God keeps receipts." One evening, the sky blazed pink like someone spilled joy across it. He watched from behind the diner, where the exhaust vents breathed like sleepy giants. Miss Linda brought out a paper cup. "Hot chocolate," she said. "Extra marshmallows." He held it like a treasure from a generous king. The city plows carved canyons in the snow. Jacob walked those white roads like a pilgrim. Every footprint said, "I was here, and I'm still going." He thought of psalm words about valleys and shadows. He figured shadows mean there's always a light somewhere. A thrift store Bible fell open to a page about lost things being found. He smiled at the timing, because timing is a love language. "Maybe I'm the coin," he joked to the dusty air. Maybe someone was sweeping a floor, eyes sharp, heart steady. Maybe that someone had a name he once knew. You could feel the town beginning to notice. Not with gossip. With warmth. A scarf left on a hook. A sandwich on a step. Stories do that, they thaw people out. And Jacob's story was just beginning to melt the ice. One late night, the wind quieted like it was listening. Jacob stared at the road until the lines blurred. He was thinking about his mother's hushes, the ones that sounded like warnings and lullabies. There was a key on a string around her neck she never took off. He wondered what door it fit. Sometimes, he'd press his ear to the bakery door. Hear the kneader thump, thump, thump. The rhythm felt like a heart. He thought about how dough rises in warmth. People do, too, when given half a chance. As the season turned, the cold grew clean instead of cruel. Jacob learned the art of layers: coat, sweater, memory, prayer. A coach at the park tossed him a ball. "Run it back," the man said. Jacob did, and his legs remembered joy. He kept one promise to himself: don't harden. Let the heart stay soft, even if the world isn't. It's risky, sure, but love requires risk. And Scripture says perfect love throws fear out on the curb. So he kept opening the door, even when the knob froze. One starry night, the sky looked close enough to touch. Jacob whispered names he barely remembered, testing how they felt. One name tasted like wintergreen and road dust. He rolled it again, slower. It didn't hurt as much as before. A letter without a stamp sat tucked inside his backpack. Not written by him. Not addressed to him. He'd found it in a box of church donations. He didn't open it. Not yet. Some doors are meant to open at exactly the right minute. He stood outside the library again, cheeks red, scarf snug. Across the street, a sedan idled, headlights soft as moonlight. He felt watched, but not the bad kind. Like the way shepherds watch sheep. Like the way a father might watch a son he's been missing. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of cedar and something expensive. The sedan's door eased open, slow and careful. Jacob held his breath, the way you do when the ocean pulls back before a wave. He didn't know it yet, But this was the edge of everything changing. And the secret his mother kept was walking toward him, step by step. The kitchen clock ticked like a metronome, steady and unyielding. Jacob's mother, Anna, scrubbed the same plate 3 times as if soap could wash memories away. Her eyes drifted toward the window whenever headlights cut across the curtains. There was always something unsaid in her pauses. Secrets have a sound, and Jacob was beginning to hear it. He'd ask now and then, in a voice soft as thread, "Who was he, Mom?" Anna would shake her head, forcing a smile that never reached her cheeks. "Not tonight, sweetheart. Some things are too heavy for bedtime." The sink swallowed her voice, bubbles hiding truths. Silence built a wall higher than the picket fences on Maple Street. Neighbors waved, unaware of the weight behind Anna's smile. She carried groceries, paid bills, laughed politely. But every task seemed stitched with hesitation. Jacob could sense it, the way a dog senses thunder before it comes. In the attic, tucked inside a shoebox, Jacob once found a photograph. It was worn, edges curled like autumn leaves. The man in the picture wore a suit that didn't quite fit. He stood beside Anna, younger then, her smile wide and fearless. Jacob studied the man's eyes. They looked like his. Anna discovered the photo missing the same evening. Her hands trembled when she found it under Jacob's pillow. "Where did you get this?" she whispered, though she already knew. Jacob looked down, afraid the truth might shatter the air. "Mom, is he my father?" Anna pressed the photo to her chest like it might dissolve. "Yes," she said, voice cracking like dry wood. "But we don't speak of him. Not here. Not now." Her words were a locked door. And Jacob was left holding the key in his imagination. At church, Pastor Raymond preached about truth setting people free. Jacob glanced at his mother, wondering if freedom scared her. She clutched her hymnal tighter, knuckles white. Sometimes faith feels like light. Other times, like a spotlight. Anna seemed to prefer the shadows. The whispers of the town carried fragments Jacob didn't understand. Anna had her reasons. They'd murmur at the diner. No one ever finished the sentence. Whispers are tricky. They protect and poison in equal measure. Jacob gathered them like puzzle pieces missing their corners. Late at night, Anna prayed aloud, thinking Jacob was asleep. Her words were broken, raw, half confessions, half bargains. "Lord, keep him safe from what I couldn't change. Don't let him hate me when the truth comes." Jacob listened, heart pounding, understanding only that love can ache. One evening, while folding laundry, Anna paused over a shirt too small for Jacob now. She held it to her face, eyes closing as if inhaling the past. Tears slipped down, dotting the fabric. Jacob pretended not to notice, though the sight carved itself into him. The past had teeth, and it bit quietly. The mailbox sometimes held letters without a return address. Anna always snatched them first, tearing them before Jacob could see. Once, he caught a glimpse of bold handwriting, sharp and slanted. His name was on the envelope, but the pieces went into the trash, unread. At school, during show and tell, kids spoke of fathers, firemen, truck drivers, teachers. Jacob stayed quiet, holding a marble instead. When the teacher asked, he said, "It's round, no ending, no beginning." The class clapped politely. But Anna cried that night, alone in the kitchen. She told stories sometimes, but always half-built. A road trip with no names. A house by the river, faceless. Jacob learned to fill in blanks with guesses. Maybe his father was a hero. Maybe a villain. Either way, he was the missing verse in a song stuck in Jacob's head. The Bible on Anna's nightstand fell open often to Psalms. She underlined verses about protection, mercy, and waiting. Waiting for what? Jacob wondered. Maybe waiting is just faith stretched thin. And Anna's faith was frayed but unbroken. One rainy afternoon, thunder rattled the window panes. Jacob asked again, voice firmer this time. "Mom, why won't you tell me?" Anna set down her sewing, eyes glistening. "Because sometimes the truth doesn't heal, it cuts deeper." The tension grew with Jacob's years. Every birthday candle carried a silent wish. "Tell me." But Anna's lips stayed sealed. The gift was always the same. New shoes, warm but ordinary. No card signed with two names. Jacob began keeping his own secrets. Dreams he didn't share, questions he scribbled in notebooks. He'd write, "Where is he now?" Then cross it out, as if erasing could silence longing. But longing doesn't erase, it lingers like perfume. At Sunday suppers, Anna bowed her head longer than others. Her grace was less about food, more about survival. "Thank you for what we have," she'd whisper. Jacob peeked at her face, eyes squeezed tight, lips trembling. It sounded more like a plea than a prayer. When Jacob laughed too hard, Anna sometimes flinched. It wasn't the laugh, it was the echo of another's. Something in his voice carried history. Anna covered it with a cough, but Jacob noticed. You can't unhear your own resemblance. In the grocery store, a stranger once stared too long. Anna pulled Jacob close, hurrying down the aisle. Her hand was firm, almost painful. "Do you know him?" Jacob asked. Her answer came sharp. "No. And neither do you." At night, Jacob replayed every odd glance, every hurried answer. The puzzle grew, though pieces were still missing. He traced the photograph under his mattress, memorizing details. The man's tie, slightly crooked. The watch on his wrist. Details became companions when names were forbidden. Anna's Bible verses became Jacob's echoes. "Be still and know," he clung to them, hoping stillness might bring clarity. But stillness can also sharpen silence. And silence was the language of their house. One Christmas, the church handed out angel ornaments. Jacob painted his gold, tucked it in his coat pocket. Anna watched him carefully, as if the ornament were dynamite. "Don't lose it," she said. Her words carried double weight. The attic grew into forbidden territory. Anna kept a lock on the trunk by the window. Jacob tried once, but the key was on that necklace she never removed. He wondered if it opened more than wood and hinges. He wondered if it opened her heart. Every unanswered question shaped Jacob like water shaped stone. He grew quiet, observant, carrying his curiosity like contraband. Friends shared secrets like candy. Jacob shared none. What he wanted wasn't for trading. It was the missing chapter of his own story. One twilight, Anna sat on the porch, rocking slowly. Jacob joined her, silence between them heavy but familiar. She looked at him, tears brimming. "Someday you'll know," she whispered. The words felt both promise and warning. The sound of cicadas filled the gap where truth should have been. Jacob held onto the railing, feeling splinters bite. Anna closed her eyes, as if bracing for a storm only she could see. Secrets may sleep, but they dream loud. And Jacob's life was about to wake one. It started with a paper cup left on the bakery steps. Steam curled like little prayers in the morning chill. A napkin tucked under the lid read, "Warm up, honey." Jacob looked around, saw no one, only Mrs. Carter's light. Kindness, quiet as snowfall, found him first. At the diner, Miss Linda slid him a cinnamon roll. "No charge," she winked, like it was a secret handshake. "You won't believe what happened to this one. Best roll in the pan." He laughed, sticky sweet hope on his fingers. Sugar can taste like mercy. The bus driver waited an extra minute in the wind. "Hop in, kiddo," he said, tapping the brake twice. Nobody complained, they just stared at their phones. Jacob felt seen in a way that didn't sting. Small delays can save big souls. At the library, Ms. Green waved the late fees away. "Consider it an investment," she said, eyes kind and clear. She slipped a bookmark shaped like an arrow into his book. "Stories point us home." Jacob tucked the arrow into his pocket like a compass. Outside the hardware store, Mr. Jenkins hung gloves on a clearance hook. A handwritten sign said, "Buy one, get one blessing." Jacob chose the pair with the smallest holes. "Good grip," Mr. Jenkins grinned. "Work waits for willing hands." In the church pew, an envelope lay quietly. Inside, a single dollar bill and a note, "For hot cocoa." Jacob whispered, "Thank you, to no one and to God. As Scripture says, little things multiply. The widow's mite still moves mountains." Mrs. Whitaker, the crossing guard, held traffic longer than usual. "You look cold, baby," she said, scarf fluttering like a flag. She pressed a butterscotch into his palm. Sweet things turn days around. He believed her for more than a minute. At the YMCA, the attendant pretended to find a free day pass. Left behind by a member, he said, not looking up. Jacob showered in water that felt like July. A towel waited on the bench, folded just so. Clean can feel like a second name. The thrift store bell chimed and Miss Dolores peeked over her glasses. Lost and found hats, today only, she sang. She nudged a knit cap toward him with a playful sigh. Color suits your eyes. Warmth tries on compliments before it settles in. At the grocery checkout, the cashier double-bagged his bread. Wind's wicked today, she said, slipping in a banana. Manager's special. He nodded, cheeks hot with gratitude. Food tastes different when someone noticed you. Joe at the auto shop kept the waiting room extra toasty. Sit close to the heater, champ, he said, flipping the switch. A cup of coffee appeared, mostly milk, mostly kindness. The radio hummed old Motown like a memory. Heat has a heartbeat if you listen. At the clinic, Nurse Riley taped a bandage with gentle hands. What nobody knew was, I was a street kid once, she whispered. She pressed a tiny cross sticker to the bandage. Faith travels light. Jacob wore it like armor under his sleeve. Saturday at the farmer's market, a vendor waved him over. Bruised apples, she said, bagging them full. Best for pie. Best for second chances. He imagined the smell of cinnamon at a real table. Second chances taste like autumn. Engine sirens hooped down Main Street, then quieted. The firehouse door opened. A firefighter waved Jacob in. Hot cocoa's on, he said, voice big and soft. They let him pet the Dalmatian, spotted like confetti. Celebrations come disguised as ordinary afternoons. A dog walker named Ethel paused, leash tangled around Hope. You need a hoodie, sugar, she said, fishing in her tote. She handed him one from her grandson's pile. Kids grow too fast. Grace grows faster. The fabric smelled like laundry day and safety. The mail carrier, Mr. Lewis, left magazines on the bench. Ms. Delivered, he shrugged, though his route was perfect. Keep the stories moving. The covers gleamed with places Jacob hadn't seen yet. Dreams hitch rides in glossy pages. Pastor Raymond preached about loaves and fishes. How little becomes plenty when shared. After service, casseroles multiplied on a folding table. Jacob filled a plate with kindness disguised as noodles. Miracles come layered, like lasagna. An older lady from the choir pressed bus tokens into his hand. From a friend, she winked, voice like a lullaby. He recognized the tune, Widow's Mite in modern tempo. Small gold circles, big open doors. He pocketed freedom and tried not to run. Coach Ramirez left a pair of cleats by the park bench. Wrong size for my nephew, he announced to the empty field. Jacob tried them on. Perfect. He sprinted until his lungs burned good. Remembering joy is holy work. Mr. Brooks, the teacher, forgot a spiral notebook on the steps. Inside the cover, a quote in careful ink, "Courage is contagious." Lines waited like open roads. Jacob wrote, "Cold can't own me," first thing. Then underlined it twice for truth. Officer Tate pulled up slow, window down. "Here's a number for the shelter," he said, tone gentle. "No lectures, just options. Some badges shield, some point the way." Jacob saved the card like a map folded small. Snowplows carved safe paths at dawn. One driver stopped, waved Jacob across like a VIP. "You've got places to be," he grinned through frost. "Don't we all?" Jacob whispered to the winter. "Roads answer when you speak kindly." A plain envelope appeared at the diner's register. Inside, a voucher for meals signed, "A friend." Miss Linda's eyes shimmered like Christmas lights. "Looks like angels tip in cash." Jacob felt the hush of a secret well kept. Laundry day brought another quiet miracle. Someone had fed the machines ahead of time. "On the house," the note said, smiley face and all. Socks came out warm as sunrise. Mercy loves to prepay. At the library's reading circle, grandmothers made room. "Sit by me," said Mrs. Hopper, patting the chair. They read aloud, voices weaving quilts of sound. Cookies appeared, as they do when women gather. Home can be borrowed, then returned with thanks. And the most amazing thing of all, people linked up. Mr. Jenkins fixed the zipper on the gifted hoodie. Ms. Green slipped Jacob a map of scholarships. The choir lady taught him a harmony line. Kindness learned each other's names. Jacob felt taller on the inside. He wrote prayers like postcards to tomorrow. "Keep me soft," one line read, shaky but brave. He began to expect good things without flinching. Hope stretched its legs and stayed a while. Then came the coat. Not just any coat, a sturdy one, dark blue, just his size. In the pocket, cedar and something expensive. No name, only a note, "You are not forgotten." Surprise flickered into a flame he guarded with both hands. That evening, headlights idled across the alley. Footsteps approached, steady, unafraid. The back door light flickered twice like a code. Jacob's heart tapped out an answer he didn't know he knew. Some visits change weather. Headlights washed the alley in soft white, then held steady. Jacob's breath rose in little clouds, each one a question. Mrs. Carter's back door light flickered like a code. Footsteps approached, slow, measured, unafraid. The night leaned in to listen. A man stepped from the glow, coat dark as river water. Gloves in one hand, a small leather thermos in the other. His shoes didn't splash. He walked like streets made room. Cedar and something expensive drifted ahead of him. Jacob's new coat remembered that scent. "Evening, Jacob," the man said, voice low as a cello. Not a question. A knowing. Jacob stiffened, shoulders up, feet ready to run. But the man stood still, palms open. No threat, just presence. "You won't believe what I heard about you," he added softly. "That you like the library's warm corner by the window." Jacob blinked, surprised the details fit. "Who are you?" he asked, barely above a whisper. "Names can weigh a ton when you need them most." The man offered the thermos. "Cocoa. Real chocolate." Miss Linda approved. Steam rose, sweet and steady, like a Sunday hymn. Jacob waited for the catch. None came. Kindness didn't ask for change back. A sedan idled at the curb, engine purring like a big cat. A driver's silhouette sat patient behind the wheel. The man didn't look back. He focused on Jacob, eyes clear, steady. Seeing without staring, gentle as a porch light. "What nobody knew was, I've been around," he said. Quietly. "Watching out when the wind got mean." Jacob frowned, sorting truth from sugar. "How do you know about the wind?" "The wind told me your story," the man answered, half-smile. He slipped off his gloves, hands steady, nails clean. A watch caught the light. Old, not flashy, well-loved. He cupped the cocoa while Jacob decided. "Take your time," he said. "Good things don't rush." Time, for once, felt like a friend. Jacob took a sip. Heat ran down to his ribs, unclenching doors. The man nodded, relief flickering across his face. "Cold's a thief," he said. "We steal back what we can." They stood like that, sharing a small victory. "Do you know my mom?" Jacob asked, careful. The man's gaze shifted, tender around the edges. "I used to," he said, words chosen like china. "Back when laughter came easy." Jacob's pulse sounded like a drumline. The bakery's exhaust hummed a winter lullaby. A train horn worked the distance like a slow prayer. The man glanced at the church steeple, barely visible. "God is near to the broken-hearted," he murmured. Scripture fit the air like a warm glove. He set a folded envelope on the crate beside Jacob. No stamp, no address, only careful ink. "For you," he said. "When you're ready." Jacob stared but didn't touch. Some gifts require courage to open. "And the most amazing thing," the man went on, "is how a town can hold a boy together without knowing." He listed names softly. Ms. Green, Mr. Jenkins, Mrs. Harper. Everyone made Jacob's chest ache in a good way. Love had been busy on Main Street. Snow sifted down like sifted flour. The man brushed a flake from Jacob's sleeve, then stopped. "May I?" his eyes asked. Jacob nodded once, surprised at his own yes. Trust takes tiny steps before it runs. "Do you have a place tonight?" the man asked. "No lectures," he added quickly. "Options." He mentioned the church hall, the shelter, a safe motel. "I'll cover it," he said, plain as daylight. Money sounded small beside his promise. Jacob felt the tug-of-war inside: pride, hunger, safety. He lifted his chin, measuring this stranger's steadiness. "What's in it for you?" he asked. The man swallowed, truth rising. "To make right what's been wrong too long." A gust rattled the dumpster lids like cymbals. The sedan's wipers whispered across glass. The man didn't flinch, didn't hurry. He waited the way oaks wait out storms. Patience is a language boys like Jacob understand. "People talk," Jacob said, testing the water. "They say my mom had her reasons." "She did," the man answered, no hesitation. "She protected what mattered." His voice held the ache of old roads. Miss Linda cracked the back door, light spilling. "You okay out here, sweetheart?" she called. The man stepped back, palms still open. "All good, ma'am," he said, respectful as Sunday. She studied him, recognition flickering, then closed the door. The man exhaled, a cloud that looked like relief. "I should have come sooner," he said. Jacob tasted the word sooner like salt. "How long have you been looking?" "Long enough to pray different," the man whispered. He glanced at Jacob's coat, smiled at the fit. "Thought it might be your color," he said lightly. Surprise lit Jacob's face, then worry. "Was that you?" The man's eyes answered before his mouth did. A siren wailed far off, then faded like a memory. "Sometimes blessings arrive in pieces," the man said. "Coats." "Coco." A name said softly. Jacob felt his guard wobble, then shore up. He wasn't ready to hand over the keys. "Why me?" he asked, blunt as winter. The man's answer was a breath, a promise. "Because you're you." No sales pitch. No glitter. Just a truth that warmed like standing in sun. He pulled a card from his pocket, no digits, just a name. Lawson, it read, clean and simple. A small cross embossed in one corner. "Anyone can find me," he said. "If you want." Choice stood up straight between them. "Do you believe God keeps receipts?" Jacob asked suddenly. The man's smile tilted, surprised and proud. "I do," he said. "With interest." They both laughed, a thin, brave sound in the cold. Laughter loosened, Knott's prayers had started. "You won't believe what happens next," the man said gently. "Not because it's flashy. Because it's true." He nodded toward the envelope. "When you're ready, it opens a door." Jacob felt the hinge inside him creak. A wind gust tossed snow like confetti at a parade. The man stepped closer, not crowding, just near. "I can walk you to the church," he offered. "Or I can leave, and you keep the coat." Either way, the night would not win. Jacob weighed the choices, then pointed to the sidewalk. They walked in silence, footsteps making soft music. The sedan followed at a respectful distance. Streetlights haloed the snow, the cross on St. Matthew's glowed. Hope walked beside them like a third person. On the steps, the man paused, hand on the rail. "I knew your mother when winters were kinder," he said. "I owe you more than stories." He looked at Jacob like an answer waiting its question. Something long hidden shifted under the ice. Inside, the narthex smelled like lemon oil and candles. Pastor Raymond nodded, eyes curious, kind. The man tipped his head, a quiet greeting. No drama, just doors opening. Jacob's heart beat yesness in his throat. The man reached for the envelope, then stopped. "No," he said softly. "You keep it." He pressed Jacob's hand, quick and sure. "Read it when the room is warm. Warmth is the best translator." They stood a moment longer in the hush. "Will I see you again?" Jacob heard himself ask. "If you want," the man answered, steady as dawn. He turned to go, then looked back once. Some truths heal when spoken out loud. The door closed on a draft that wasn't cruel anymore. Jacob slipped the envelope inside his coat. Paper touched his heartbeat, counting soft. The sedan's taillights faded down Maple Street. and the night held its breath for what comes next. The envelope stayed in Jacob's pocket through the hymn and the benediction. Paper warmed to his heartbeat, waiting its turn. When the congregation drifted home, he slipped into a pew. Hands trembling, he slid his finger under the flap. Secrets don't whisper, they thunder. Inside, a letter written in sharp, slanted ink. Jacob, I am your father. The words hit like a train whistle in the fog. Every question he'd carried suddenly had a name. The room tilted, yet steadied on that sentence. I was gone too long, the letter went on. I thought leaving would protect you. I was wrong. Jacob read each line twice, afraid they'd vanish. A signature closed the page. Daniel Lawson. The name pulsed with both danger and promise. Pastor Raymond noticed the boy's pale face. Son, you all right? He asked gently. Jacob tucked the letter back, nodding too fast. Yes, sir. Just tired. Some truths need dark soil before they sprout. That night, Jacob lay awake, coat wrapped tight. His breath clouded the air above the letter. He whispered the name like a fragile prayer. Lawson. It tasted foreign, but familiar. A seed cracking open inside. Morning brought headlines Jacob didn't expect. Local businessman donates millions to rebuild shelters. The photo showed the same man from the alley. Suit sharp, smile steady, eyes undeniably his. Daniel Lawson wasn't just anyone. He was a millionaire. Jacob stared at the newspaper in disbelief. The man who offered cocoa owned half the buildings downtown. The bakery, the diner, even the library roof repairs. All carried his quiet fingerprints. Wealth walking in plain sight. Miss Linda caught Jacob staring at the paper. Small world, huh? She said, pouring coffee. Mr. Lawson's been generous for years. She didn't see Jacob's hand shake. Generous meant more when blood was involved. At school, whispers buzzed. Did you hear Lawson's back in town? Big money, big deals. Jacob listened from the edge, heart drumming. They didn't know the half of it. The library bulletin board displayed a new flyer. Lawson Foundation scholarships available. Jacob's eyes locked on the name. He thought of Ms. Green's arrow-shaped bookmark. Stories really do point us home. That evening, he found his mother at the kitchen table. Anna's hands gripped a mug too tight. You saw him, she said flat, not asking. Jacob froze, letter heavy in his pocket. Yes, he whispered. He found me. Anna's face crumpled like paper in rain. I tried to keep you safe, she said. Her voice was both apology and warning. Jacob wanted to shout, to hug, to demand. Instead, he laid the envelope on the table. She touched the handwriting like it might burn. Tears slipped fast, too many to hide. I knew this day would come, she said. He's not the same man he was. Her words broke, but her eyes begged belief. Jacob asked the question anyway. Why did he leave? Anna's silence stretched, thick as tar. Finally, she whispered, because love wasn't enough back then. The words stung worse than frost. At church that Sunday, Daniel Lawson sat in the front row. Whispers rippled like wind through wheat. Men nodded, women leaned close. Pastor Raymond's sermon about prodigals felt aimed at one man. Jacob's pulse echoed each verse. After service, Lawson stood at the door. He shook hands, smiled, spoke humbly. When Jacob approached, the smile softened. Hello, son, he said aloud this time. The word son landed heavy, but hopeful. The congregation gasped in unison. Mrs. Carter's hand flew to her mouth. Miss Linda's eyes filled with tears. The secret was public now, uncontainable. The boy and the millionaire were bound. The gossip spread down Main Street faster than traffic. At the diner, folks leaned over pie slices. At last, someone whispered. At last. Jacob felt the town staring, weighing. Belonging had never been so loud. Lawson invited Jacob to his office downtown. The building's glass shimmered like water. Inside, leather chairs, polished wood, quiet power. I want to explain, Lawson said, voice steady. Jacob braced for truths with sharp edges. Photographs lined the wall, projects, charities, ribbon cuttings. In one frame, Lawson stood with the governor. In another, he handed keys to a family smiling wide. Every image painted him generous. But Jacob wondered about the missing frames. Money built these walls, Lawson admitted. But regret built me. He leaned forward, eyes unblinking. I prayed for a second chance. God sent me you. Jacob gripped the chair, torn between fury and hope. You left, Jacob said, voice breaking. I did, Lawson admitted, no excuses. I thought I'd ruin your life. Instead, I ruined mine. Truth, raw and unsweetened, hung in the air. Forgiveness was a mountain neither had climbed yet. The office clock ticked, loud as a metronome. Jacob felt small, yet powerful. He held a story too big for one boy. Lawson reached across the desk, palm open. Jacob stared at it, world tilting. Anna's warnings echoed in his ears. The choir's hymns echoed in his chest. Jacob looked at the hand, then at the cross on the wall. Grace asked for bravery, and bravery was just one heartbeat away. He didn't take the hand, not yet. But he didn't leave either. Choice held him still, suspended. Lawson nodded, accepting the pause. Waiting can be holy, too. The revelation spread far and wide. A millionaire father. A boy from the cold. It was a story too rich to stay quiet. But for Jacob, it was more than headlines. It was the start of answers, and harder questions. And just when he thought his world couldn't tilt again, a knock sounded at the bakery's back door. Different this time. Familiar, yet new. Jacob's pulse quickened. Some truths opened doors you never knew existed. Morning broke softer than usual, like the sun tiptoed in. Jacob woke to clean sheets and a heater that hummed content. You won't believe what happened, Miss Linda said on the phone. Breakfast on me. Bring that smile. Hope poured coffee before his feet hit the floor. Lawson's driver waited outside, cap low, patience high. Diner first, the man asked, opening the door. Jacob climbed in, heart thudding like sneakers in a dryer. Maple Street slid by, familiar yet new. The future felt like an address he might learn by heart. Miss Linda set down pancakes big as clouds. Eat, baby, she said, eyes watering just a little. Lawson sat aside, quiet as a promise kept. No speeches, only gratitude folded into napkins. Grace tastes like butter when you have been cold. After breakfast, a stop at the thrift store on Main. Choose what feels like you, Lawson said, hands in pockets. Jacob picked flannel, sturdy jeans, a backpack with miles left. He passed on the flashy, reached for the faithful. Steady beats, shiny most days. At the clinic, Nurse Riley checked him over gentle as rain. Strong heart, she said, tapping her chart. A dentist cleaned the ache right out of his grin. Jacob laughed, surprised by the sound. Health feels like finding a light switch in the dark. A barber named Hank took his time. Clean cut or keep the story, he asked. Keep a little, Jacob said, smiling shy. Hank nodded, scissors whispering new beginnings. Mirrors tell the truth when you are ready. Lawson's office loomed tall, glass-catching sky. Inside, the air smelled like cedar and decisions. Here's the plan, Lawson said, calm and clear. Safe place tonight. School tomorrow. Choices always. Jacob exhaled like a tire finally patched. The motel room was simple, warm, mercy-colored. A Bible rested in the drawer, pages soft with use. Jacob traced a verse about being seen. Even me, he whispered to the beige walls. Walls can listen when you need them to. He called Pastor Raymond from the nightstand phone. Proud of you, the pastor said, voice like a blanket. We'll walk this road together. One step, then another. Together sounded like a wide doorway. Jacob stood taller, barefoot on new carpet. School came quick, like a wave with good timing. Mr. Brooks met him with a grin and a plan. Tutoring after hours. No big deal. He handed Jacob a planner, pages waiting like snow. Fresh starts love blank lines. In the counselor's office, a chair didn't squeak. Ms. Carter, different Carter, spoke slow and kind. We build routines, she said. Routines build you. Jacob nodded, surprised by how right it felt. Some scaffolding is invisible and strong. Afternoons, Lawson drove him by quiet miracles. A shelter with new beds, a kitchen with new stoves. No plaques, Lawson said. Just people warm. He waved to volunteers like old friends. Generosity prefers first names. They stopped at the library, Ms. Green beaming. "A card with your name," she said, handing it over. Jacob held it like a passport. "Welcome home, reader," she whispered. Words opened doors money could not. A banker met them at a small desk in the corner. "Savings, not spending," Lawson said softly. "Think parable of the talents." Jacob nodded, mind sparking with stories. Stewardship wears simple shoes and walks far. That evening, the church fellowship hall smelled like chili. Ladies from the choir set out cornbread like gold. Jacob helped stack chairs, happy to earn his bowl. "Loaves stretch when hearts stretch," Mrs. Harper winked. He tasted community and wanted seconds. Jacob wrote in his notebook before lights out. Today, pancakes, plans, peace. He underlined peace until the word pulsed. Then he added, "Stay soft." Soft is brave when yesterday was hard. Saturday, Lawson took him shopping for a winter coat. Jacob chose one sturdy, nothing flashy, deep navy. "Good call," Lawson said. "Quiet strength." They paid, then left 2 gift cards for the clerk to keep. Blessings like to travel incognito. At practice, Coach Ramirez waved him in. "Run the drills," he said, eyes kind, voice firm. Jacob's legs remembered joy and kept going. Sweat felt holy, like work that matters. The field learned his name without fanfare. Sunday morning, the choir tried a new harmony. Jacob slipped into the back row, heart tapping. A note found his chest and lifted. Pastor Raymond smiled without stopping the song. Praise is a language the cold can never freeze. Lawson invited him to tour a quiet construction site. "Mothers and kids will live here soon," he said softly. Jacob touched the doorframe, smelled sawdust and hope. "Can I help?" he asked, words surprising him. Lawson nodded like a prayer answered. They boxed up gifts for the pantry, cans, gloves, tiny soaps. Jacob wrote notes. "You are seen." He tucked one into each bag like a secret handshake. Miss Linda added cocoa packets for good measure. Kindness stacks up like cans on a shelf. Afternoons, Jacob studied at the bakery's small table. Mrs. Carter kept the kettle singing. He learned to focus while ovens breathed warm. Fractions turned friendly under cinnamon air. Even math softens when the room is kind. A therapist named Dr. Lee met him midweek. "Talk is courage," she said, no clipboard in sight. They traced the map of fear with steady fingers. Jacob practiced breathing like waves on a shore. Calm can be learned. Some seas obey. Lawson shared a story he had never told in public. "Pride cost me years," he said, eyes steady. "God gave me another sunrise." Jacob listened, hearing apology without excuses. Sunrises count more than headlines. On payday for the warehouse shift he picked up, Jacob smiled. He bought socks for the shelter, nothing fancy. Then a small plant for his mother's windowsill. "Second chances need sunlight," he wrote on a tag. He left it on her porch, heart-pounding hopeful. Evenings grew gentler, streets less sharp. Jacob learned bus routes like new hymns. He waved to Officer Tate, to Mr. Jenkins, to the world. Belonging moved from rumor to routine. Routine tastes like safety when you have craved it long. One night, the furnace clicked on and Jacob startled, then laughed. "Warm on purpose," he whispered, pulling the quilt close. He opened the Bible to the prodigal and read slow. No pigs, no famine, just a boy heading home. Home can be a journey made of small yes. He checked the mirror and hardly knew the eyes. Not harder. Brighter. He pressed a palm to the glass, remembering snow. "Thank you," he said to whoever was listening. Sometimes gratitude answers back in breath. But even as life softened, old echoes stirred. Questions paced like caged tigers behind the ribs. What if good is a trick? What if winter returns? Jacob closed his notebook and turned out the light. Tomorrow would bring its own weather, and one more choice. Sleep came in scraps, like receipts stuffed in a pocket. Jacob stared at the ceiling while the heater clicked and sighed. Questions lined up like shoes by a door. What if love leaves when the weather changes? He kept his boots by the bed, just in case. At breakfast, Miss Linda noticed the tremble in his spoon. "Sugar, storms get quiet too," she murmured. He tried to smile, but his jaw was tired. Cocoa helped, but doubt was a stubborn winter. Hope waited at the edge of the table. Dr. Lee named the fear out loud without flinching. "Too good to be true," she said, pen-capped, eyes steady. "Say it once, then breathe." He breathed like waves rolling toward Carolina sand. The room held, and so did he. Lawson offered a shiny phone, contracts and all. Jacob shook his head, palms flat on his jeans. "Maybe later. I want simple first." Lawson nodded, learning the shape of respect. Boundaries are bridges when built with care. The furnace rattled and Jacob flashed to cold nights. Concrete under spine, wind in his teeth. He sat up, counting breaths, matching them to prayer. "Lord, keep me present," he whispered. The room softened its edges and stayed. Sunday brought a sermon about perfect love throwing fear out. Jacob felt seen and a little exposed. He hummed along to the hymn, voice athread. The choir swelled around him like a quilt. Warmth is a team sport. Anna washed dishes like she was polishing memories. "Mom, I need more truth," Jacob said gently. She dried her hands slow, eyes on the window. "I was scared he'd break what I was trying to mend." Fear had lived in the house rent-free. That night Jacob wrote a letter he did not mail. "Dear Mr. Lawson, Dad, I am both yes and no." He folded it into a square, then a smaller square. Some words must practice before they perform. The envelope waited without complaint. At school, whispers tested his balance. "Millionaire's kid," someone muttered near the lockers. Jacob tightened his backpack straps and kept walking. He chose algebra over arguments. Equations answer without judging. Coach Ramirez watched him run drills like pennants. "No pity on this field," the coach said, voice firm. "Only sweat and choices." Jacob ran until his legs remembered trust. Effort turns noise into distance. Tyler met him at the bus stop, hand warmers ready. "No spares today," he grinned, handing them anyway. They shared a laugh that felt pre-money, pre-headlines. Old kindness fit like a favorite hoodie. Friends remember who you were and cheer who you are. Jacob stood in front of the closet and hesitated. Blue coat, sturdy and quiet, or the older one with stories. He tried both, testing how courage felt on his shoulders. He kept the new one but tucked the old in his bag. You can honor yesterday without living in it. Lawson invited him to a charity gala, black tie and flashes. Jacob's chest tightened at the thought of gold chandeliers. "Not yet," he said, voice even. "Invite me to the build site instead." Sawhorses felt safer than spotlights. Surprise flickered in Lawson's eyes, then relief. "Done," he said, easy as an open hand. They marked a date to swing hammers, not champagne. Schedules can be sacraments when they serve love. Jacob slept deeper that night. But then came the dream with cold breath on his neck. He woke sitting up, fists clenched, heart racing. He opened the Bible and found the psalm about shelter. "Under wings," he read aloud slowly. The room exhaled with him. He skipped a meeting once, for no good reason. Paced Maple Street, mad at nothing and everything. When Lawson called, Jacob let it ring. Shame tried to move in with all its boxes. He unpacked it by telling the truth. Dr. Lee taught him to look around and name real things. One red mug. One blue sign. One steady breath. He added a verse like a fourth corner of the room. Truth, breath, scripture, chair. Panic ran out of places to hide. Anna set a plant on the sill and finally spoke plain. He left when pride ran the house like a tyrant. She wasn't defending, just naming storms. "I forgave him in prayer long before I told you." Jacob felt a door unlock somewhere inside. At the shelter, a kid sat alone with a paper cup. "Cold's a thief," Jacob said, offering half his sandwich. The boy nodded like he knew that sermon by heart. Jacob saw himself not long ago. Seeing heals what pity never could. He walked downtown after dark, testing old shadows. The alley smelled the same, but it did not own him. He sat on the crate, just for a minute, then stood. "This isn't home," he told the wind. The wind agreed by staying quiet. He practiced saying hard sentences to Lawson. "I need time. Please ask before buying. I am more than a headline." Each phrase felt like lifting a barbell. Lawson listened, hands still, shoulders square. Respect grew muscle. Jacob took a shift sweeping at the build site. Dust rose like incense in the late light. He earned cash, small but honest, and bought socks for the pantry. Giving on purpose rewired something inside. Joy stuck like sawdust on his sleeves. He turned down a glossy card to a private club. "Maybe someday," he said, without shame. "Today I have choir practice." Mrs. Harper high-fived him in the pew. Music outranked marble that evening. Ms. Green asked him to speak at reading circle. He said no, then yes, then a softer yes. "Tell them about the Arrow bookmark," she urged. He stood with knees knocking and told the truth. Eyes watered. Books felt like family. Prayer groups circled him with gentle hands and no demands. Catholic, evangelical, curious, tired, hopeful. They agreed on this. Love feeds, warms, listens. Jacob felt stitched to the town by invisible thread. Unity hummed like a hymn everyone knew. Shame still tried to sell him old stories. Undeserving. Temporary. A fluke. He answered with new lines he had practiced. Chosen. Learning. Here on purpose. The echo got quieter each time. What nobody knew was, his boldest resistance was forgiveness. Not all at once, but inches at a time. He forgave the winter for being cruel. He forgave Lawson for being late. He forgave himself for surviving with a hard shell. He wrote rules for his own heart on a sticky note. Stay soft. Ask for help. Tell the truth fast. Work before worry. Pray before posts. He stuck it on the mirror where fear liked to stand. Fear learned to share the space. Then the diner filled with a murmur that felt like weather. Gazes slid toward the door as Lawson walked in. Pie forks paused midair, coffee cooled on saucers. Jacob felt the pressure shift across the room. And the community drew a breath he could hear from his booth. The diner hush felt like snowfall inside. Miss Linda's neon flickered brave and steady. Pie slices waited midair for permission to land. Lawson nodded to the room, nothing flashy, nothing small. Jacob felt every gaze lift and settle on him. You won't believe what happened next. Mrs. Carter stepped from behind the counter with coffee. On the house, she said, setting 2 cups down. The room exhaled, then inhaled as one. Kindness started the conversation before words did. At the corner booth, Mr. Jenkins tugged his cap. "Son, that coat fits you right," he called. Compliment as bridge, not spotlight. Jacob managed a thank you that didn't shake. Bravery can sound like good manners. Gossip tried to get loud and then thought better. Miss Linda's stare is a famous thing in town. It can turn rumor into decoff in a heartbeat. People adjusted, softer, curious instead of sharp. Curiosity is safer than judgment when hearts are tender. Across the street, the barber flicked his lights twice. Hank's signal meant, "I see you, steady on." The bakery bell chimed like a tiny amen. News had already outrun their footsteps. Maple Street loves a headline with hope. At St. Matthew's, the choir phone tree lit up. "Pray for courage. Pray for calm," Mrs. Harper texted. Catholic friends chimed in with Hail Marys. Evangelical friends sent psalm lines. Heaven understood the mixed chorus just fine. The town Facebook group tried to behave. Aunties posted heart emojis and casserole offers. One loud voice asked for proof and got silence back. Pastor Raymond left a verse without comment. Sometimes scripture is the only statement required. News crews rolled in like weather vans. A reporter asked Jacob for a quote by the mural downtown. He shook his head kindly and stepped aside. Lawson said, "No press today," and meant it. Boundaries drew a kind circle around the boy. At school, Lockers clicked like camera shutters. Whispers traveled fast, tripping over facts. Tyler stood beside Jacob, easy as always. "Math test still Thursday," he said. Normalcy earned a standing ovation in Jacob's chest. The library became Switzerland, blessedly neutral. Ms. Green stamped books like prayers. She reserved the window seat without saying so. "Readers first," the sign said that day. Jacob sat where the sun could find his shoulder. The hardware store taped a handwritten sign to the door. "Need work? Ask inside. No questions, just tasks." Mr. Jenkins fixed a dozen little things for folks. He accepted no money in Jacob's name. Generosity wore work gloves and kept moving. The YMCA put out a rack of hoodies. "Take one if you're cold," the tag read. Nobody stared at who took what. People learned kindness has no clipboard. Warmth's favorite language is casual. At the town hall meeting, chairs scraped and opinions rose. A few worried about favoritism, more worried about children. Lawson stood, hands open, voice steady, no microphone. "Shelters and scholarships. Transparency," he said. Surprise rippled when he asked for public oversight. What nobody knew was, Anna almost didn't come. She slipped in late, hair pinned, eyes brave. When she stood to speak, the room went quiet. "I kept my son safe the only way I knew," she said. Her voice threaded truth without unraveling dignity. A murmur of yes moved like wind through wheat. Not agreement with every line, but respect. Mrs. Diaz from the pantry wiped her eyes. "Let's feed first, debate later," she said. The motion passed with nods and napkins. The firehouse hosted a chilly night on short notice. Firefighters ladled bowls with steady hands. Lawson took tickets at the door like any volunteer. Jacob refilled water pitchers, grateful for something simple. Working beside people quieted the noise. On Main Street, window displays shifted themes. The thrift store dressed a mannequin in a navy coat. The caption read, "Quiet strength." Even commerce learned to whisper. And whispering can be powerful when the town leans in. Some folks still doubted, because some folks always do. A man at the back pew folded his arms hard. Pastor Raymond met his eyes and nodded anyway. Grace doesn't require agreement to get started. It simply shows up and stays longer than expected. At the clinic, Nurse Riley posted hours for free checkups. "Brought to you by neighbors," the flyer said. No foundation name, no photo ops. Jacob watched a line form and felt taller inside. Healing can trend without hashtags. A local podcaster asked Miss Linda for the story. She wiped a counter that didn't need wiping. "Story belongs to the boy," she said. Then slid the podcaster a pie to go. Media left with cinnamon instead of quotes. The basketball court filled up after school. Kids argued fouls, then forgot to argue. Coach Ramirez blew the whistle like a benediction. Jacob ran plays until his lungs sang yes. Sweat united what opinions had tried to separate. At the reading circle, grandmothers patted the empty chair. Jacob sat, knees knocking softer than before. He read a page where a lost thing gets found. The room breathed with him line by line. Hope turned the corner and stayed for tea. The sheriff's cruiser idled by the curb, windows down. "Proud of you, kid," Officer Tate said. "Town's learning new habits." He tipped his hat toward the church and the diner. Institutions were practicing tenderness, and it showed. A quiet envelope appeared at the pantry. Inside, gift cards and a note, from a friend of friends. Mrs. Diaz smiled without needing to know more. Jacob tucked a verse into the box for good measure. Bread and scripture share shelf space just fine. Sunday brought a blended service, choir and band together. Hands raised, hands folded, candles and clapping. Anna stood between Lawson and Jacob without flinching. "Make us one," the prayer said, old and new at once. The town tried the lyric on and it fit. But not every heart turned at the same speed. A few walked out early, leaving doors to swing. Jacob watched them go and felt the tug. Dr. Lee's words returned, "Let others have their timeline." He nodded to the slow miracles anyway. Cameras eventually got bored and rolled away. The street felt like itself again, only kinder. People waved with their whole face, not just fingers. Names stuck after introductions. Belonging moved from breaking news to daily bread. That evening, Jacob and Lawson stacked chairs at the church. No speeches, no microphones, just rubber caps clicking. Anna tied trash bags with practiced grace. They didn't match yet, they harmonized. And somewhere in that simple rhythm, forgiveness looked over. In the hush that followed, Pastor Raymond left the lights low. A Bible lay open to a verse about new mercies every morning. Jacob traced the words, not ready to let go. He felt the town breathe with him, slower, kinder. And tomorrow held a question only faith could answer. Forgiveness sounded simple from the pulpit, like a chorus you already knew. Living it felt like learning a new instrument with cold fingers. Jacob sat in the back pew, curiosity awake and alert. He traced the grain in the wood, counting slow breaths. Some lessons arrive as whispers before they become songs. Pastor Raymond began with a story older than the town. A son who wandered, a father who ran to meet him. No footnotes, just mercy with dust on its feet. Jacob's heart leaned forward like a porch light. Could love really run faster than regret? After service, candles flickered in a side chapel. A few Catholics knelt quietly, crossing themselves. Evangelical friends formed a small prayer circle nearby. Different gestures, same surrender. Jacob felt the room agree without words. "You won't believe what happened," Miss Linda whispered later. "Anna asked me for the good china." They set a table in the fellowship hall just because. Napkins folded like lilies, cups lined up like hope. Feasts can teach what sermons start. Lawson arrived holding a small worn Bible. He did not open it to perform. He placed it on the table. "Teach me," he said to Pastor Raymond and Mrs. Harper. "Teach me how to be forgiven and how to change." Surprise softened the room's edges. Dr. Lee mapped it out in plain words. Forgiveness isn't amnesia, it's choosing not to aim hurt back. She drew circles that closed gently instead of hard. Boundaries make forgiveness honest. Jacob copied the lines into his notebook. Anna set the teapot down and took a breath that counted. "I forgave you in prayer before I knew how to speak it," she told Lawson. Her voice did not tremble this time. It kept my heart from hardening like last winter's ground. The room held its breath, then exhaled. Ms. Green brought a stack of cards with verses paraphrased. "Be kind. Be tender-hearted. Make room for return." No chapter numbers, just truth in simple ink. Jacob tucked one inside his pocket with the arrow bookmark. Maps need legend and compass. What nobody knew was, Tyler's dad had left, too. He stood by the soda machine and spoke low. "I forgave him last year. Took forever, felt like instant." He bumped Jacob's shoulder like brothers do. Shared ache turned into steady ground. The choir rehearsed a hymn about mercy that morning. Voices braided across ages, alto hugging tenor. Jacob found a harmony line he didn't know he knew. Mrs. Harper winked without breaking the note. Music remembered what mouths forget to say. Officer Tate stepped in, hat in hand. "Plenty of folks owe and are owed," he said. "Forgiveness doesn't cancel consequences, it redeems them." He nodded toward Lawson, not unkind. Justice and mercy shook hands without arguing. At the build site, Jacob and Lawson worked side by side. Hammer, measure, breathe. They talked less and listened more. Sawdust settled on old stories until they gleamed. Work became prayer without needing a label. Anna and Mrs. Diaz organized boxes at the pantry. Labels read soup, socks, second chances. Jacob slipped notes into each. "You are seen." It felt like mailing forgiveness to strangers. Hope wears stamps and brown tape sometimes. In counseling, Jacob named what still hurt. The cold nights. The unanswered birthdays. The fear of chandeliers and microphones. Dr. Lee nodded, then asked, "What do you want now?" Wanting can be holier than resenting. He wanted honest time, quiet meals, small promises kept. He wanted to pray without bracing for a letdown. He wrote each want in full words, no shortcuts. Then read them aloud to Lawson at the diner. Silence afterward felt roomy, not empty. Lawson brought no speeches, just presents. He apologized like a man paying debts with interest. No excuses, just receipts laid on the table. "Thank you for surviving," he told Jacob. "Sometimes gratitude is the bravest confession." Pastor Raymond led a short liturgy of release. One line said, "We let go of what we cannot fix alone." Another said, "We turn our faces toward the light." Hands opened, eyes closed, hearts listened. Jacob felt a knot loosen that he hadn't named before. At St. Matthew's, a small group lit candles for absent fathers. Not to shame, to remember. A psalm hummed like a lullaby along the walls. Anna squeezed Jacob's hand twice, their private code for courage. Flame taught them both how to keep steady. The next morning, Jacob delivered cinnamon rolls to the shelter. He left the bag and stayed to wipe tables. A boy asked, "Does it get better?" Jacob answered, "It got different first." Different can be the first doorway to better. Ms. Green hosted a reading on parables. A farmer, a lost coin, a feast. "Notice," she said, "how joy invites the neighbors." Jacob imagined a neighborhood where joy knocks on every door. He checked if his heart had room for that knock. A skeptic in the back row raised his hand. "What if forgiveness gets you hurt again?" Mrs. Harper answered like a mother and a sage. "We forgive with our eyes open and our sleeves rolled." Wisdom wears an apron and still sings. On Friday night, the town gathered in the gym. Not a gala, no spotlights, just a potluck. Lawson spoke exactly one sentence. "Thank you for helping me repair what I broke." The bleachers answered with a low, warm yes. Jacob asked Anna if he could pray before sleep. They knelt by the bed, two voices braided. "Keep us soft," he said. "Keep us true." Anna added, "Teach us to try again tomorrow." Amen landed like a blanket. He wrote a list called What Faith Does. Feeds, warms, waits, tells the truth fast, forgets the score. He taped it inside his locker behind the mirror. When fear peered in, the list peered back. Scores lost their appetite. On Sunday, Pastor and Father Michael swapped pulpits for one hymn. No controversy, just friendship with a laugh. The town clapped offbeat and happy. Jacob saw heaven smile somewhere above the rafters. Unity looked good in borrowed robes. And the most amazing thing of all, Jacob realized forgiveness was changing his memory. The cold nights still existed, but they were not the headline. The headline read, "Boy Learns Love in a Town That Stayed." He underlined it twice in his mind. After choir, Lawson waited with 2 paper cups. No big talk, just cocoa warm and honest. "Next week," he said, "want to help plant trees by the shelter?" Jacob nodded before words showed up. Roots sounded like a plan faith would like. He stepped outside and the air felt new without trying. Snow crisp, night quiet, stars leaning in. He whispered, "I forgive," once for the past, once for himself. The wind carried it somewhere useful. And tomorrow gathered itself at the edge of the street, ready. Spring leaned over Maple Street like a friendly neighbor. Windows opened. Sidewalks remembered laughter. Jacob tied his shoes slower, like he had time to spare. "You won't believe what happens when you keep showing up," he told himself. Hope stretched like a cat and settled in the sun. At the construction site, saplings waited in neat rows. Lawson handed Jacob a shovel, no speeches, just tools. They planted one tree, then another, then another. Roots held earth the way promises hold tomorrow. Work hummed to him, everyone somehow knew. The scholarship flyer wore his name like it belonged there. Ms. Green circled deadlines with a bright pen. "Let's shoot for community college first," she said, practical and warm. Jacob pictured classrooms with windows and light. Dreams like that prefer steady steps over leaps. Anna brewed coffee that tasted like courage. They filled out forms at the kitchen table, page after page. When a question stung, they paused and breathed. "God guides," Anna whispered, "not to convince, to remember." Paperwork turned into prayer work line by line. Sundays kept their rhythm, candles and clapping, hands raised and folded. Father Michael and Pastor Raymond shared a smile near the door. Jacob loved that the room held both candles and guitars. Mercy sounded good in every key. Unity felt like a house with many rooms and one table. Mr. Brooks set a stack of practice tests on the desk. "No rush," he said. "We build this muscle together." Jacob underlined verbs like trail markers. When doubt tried to heckle, he wrote, "chosen," in the margin. Words can stand guard when fear knocks. Tyler and Jacob shot hoops behind the gym until dusk. Streetlights blinked on like halos. They counted made shots out loud, laughing when they lost track. "Feels normal," Tyler said, grinning. Normal tasted like victory without cameras. The pantry added a tiny corner called the note wall. Jacob pinned a card that read, "You are seen." Beside it, someone added, "and needed." The wall grew into a chorus of small sentences. Communities heal in declarative mood. Lawson took Jacob to a quiet office downtown. Not the big one, this one had mismatched chairs and a kettle. "We can learn money like a language," he said. "Save, give, spend with a plan." They wrote a budget that felt like a map, not a leash. A letter arrived with a college crest in blue. Jacob held it like a living thing. He opened it slow, then laughed out loud. "Accepted," he read, and the room cheered. Future pulled up a chair and asked for seconds. Miss Linda threw a tiny party after closing. Paper hats, store-brand soda, cake from the day's end. "Tell us your first class," she urged. "Intro to writing," Jacob said, shy and proud. Pens felt like plowshares in his hands. Anna taped the acceptance letter to the fridge. She stood back, arms crossed, eyes bright. "Looks good on you," she said to the paper and the boy. They hugged longer than they worried. Love likes to finish each day with a full stop. Dr. Lee helped Jacob plan for wobble days. "Expect old fears to visit," she said, "then show them the calendar." They penciled in rest like an appointment with peace. Jacob wrote a verse beside it, short and strong. Schedule and scripture shook hands. At choir, Mrs. Harper moved him up a row. "Your harmony found its voice," she smiled. Jacob felt the floor steady under the note. He sang the word mercy like he meant it. And he did. A Saturday shift at the shelter turned into tutoring hour. Jacob helped a kid read a chapter about a brave little train. They high-fived after the last page. "Again next week?" the boy asked. "Yes," Jacob said, learning the power of small yeses. Lawson invited Anna to coffee at the church hall. They spoke in sentences that didn't need armor. "Thank you for keeping him safe," Lawson said. "Thank you for learning to show up," Anna replied. Some bridges get rebuilt plank by plank with silence in between. The barber, Hank, framed a photo of the build site. He put it next to a picture of his first haircut in town. "Milestones," he said, tapping the glass. Jacob's smile looked lived in, not borrowed. Joy ages well when it's honest. Officer Tate started a winter gear drive early on purpose. "Planning beats panic," he told the council. The town nodded like a choir on the downbeat. They boxed gloves and faith side by side. Preparation is kindness that arrives on time. Jacob learned to love quiet mornings. He journaled before the town woke, short lines, true ones. Warmth on purpose. Gratitude first. Stay soft. He added, forgive again, on days that asked for it. Practice made the list more than ink. A visiting speaker came to the gym one evening. She spoke about calling and courage. "Start where your feet are," she said. Jacob looked down, then out. His feet were on Maple Street, and he was ready. What nobody knew was, Anna applied for a night course. She tucked the receipt under a magnet without fuss. Jacob spotted it and grinned so wide the kitchen laughed. "Look at us," he said. "Learning on purpose." Growth ran in the family like a tune. The library started a writing club on Tuesdays. Jacob read a story about a porch light that never sleeps. The group clapped soft and true. Ms. Green said, "Keep the lantern lit." He left with pages warm from being heard. Lawson asked the pastor about a quiet scholarship fund. "No names," he said, "just doors that open." They set it up with oversight and clear rules. Trust like sunlight and good accounting. Generosity exhaled and got to work. A storm tried to revisit one night in late fall. Wind rattled, Memories prowled the hall. Jacob made tea for himself and the past. "Sit," he told the fear, "then go." He slept after the kettle sang amen. On move-in day, the dorm room smelled like paint and possibility. Across from the thrift store sat on the desk. Next to it, a candle for when quiet needed company. Anna fluffed the pillow like a ritual. Lawson fixed a wobbly chair without calling attention to it. They prayed in a circle, hands light, eyes open. "Keep us steady and kind," Jacob said. Anna added, "Teach us to listen." Lawson whispered, "Thank you for another sunrise." Amen sounded like a key turning easily. The first class began with pens uncapped and nerves calm. The professor said, "Write what is true." Jacob's hand moved before fear could. He wrote, "Cold can't own me." Then, "Love keeps receipts and pays forward." On the sidewalk after class, the world felt wide, not wild. Jacob tucked his notebook under his arm like a friend. He looked back toward town, where belles and diners and hammers lived. "See you soon," he whispered to Maple Street. Some goodbyes are really promises to return. He texted Lawson and Anna a picture of the campus tree. "Leaves gold as choir robes in late afternoon." "Rooted and reaching," he typed. They both replied with hearts and a prayer emoji. Sometimes symbols say enough. And just as the day folded into a calmer night, a new message buzzed from the pantry coordinator. "Could you help speak to the kids next month?" Jacob smiled at the screen, already picturing chairs in a circle. The future kept knocking, and this time, the door stayed open. Sometimes the cold isn't just weather, it's the feeling that life forgot your name. But when a town learns to keep the porch light on, and a father learns to show up, even winter loosens its grip. If Jacob's Road taught us anything, it's this: small yes stack into shelter, old prayers still find new doors, and grace works best with sleeves rolled up. Here's my invitation for you: start where your feet are. Who could use a warm word, a hot cup, a quick text that says, "You're seen"? What promise do you need to keep today? One call, one visit, one apology, one try. Faith isn't fireworks, it's matches in your pocket. Strike one. Shield it. Share the light. Have you ever felt something similar, like hope was late but still arriving? What would you do in this situation if Jacob were your neighbor, or your son, or simply the kid at your church door? Which part of this story tugged your heart the most, and why? Tell us in the comments. Your words might be the porch light someone needs. If this journey stirred you, stay with us. Subscribe and gently turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story we craft together. Always warm, respectful, and real. And if you know a friend who could use a little courage, share this video with her today. One share can be the scarf on a cold night. Now it's your turn. Who will you forgive, who will you check on, and which small yes will you offer before the day ends? We're cheering for you. Take the first step, and watch the road rise to meet your feet.